Thank you all for being here with me today. My name is Barbara Baker, and I'm so sorry that I'm not there in person. I'll turn sideways to explain why. I am 33 weeks pregnant with my little one, and at the very last minute, my doctors just advised me that it wouldn't be safe for me to travel into Phoenix this weekend to be there with you all. I'm so incredibly bummed. I'll see you next year. I'm going to be there in person. I'm so excited about this event and about everything Dr. Dunn has done to really create a phenomenal environment for us women in orthodontics to grow together, collaborate together, and be more as one. So looking forward next year to being there in person. I apologize I'm not there. I'm recording here from Nashville today, and really excited to talk to you all today a little bit more about the balance of leading and living and what that looks like. For me, I am a vice president of operations. I've been in a VPO role for about 7 years now. Prior to that, spent a lot of my career as an operator in corporate America for companies like the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company and corporate Target. And I found myself in the orthodontic space over the past 3-4 years, really growing and developing as a VPO. So really excited to just share with you all today what I've learned. My original session had some interaction with it. Today, I'm going to give you thoughts to ponder in a shift of gears here, but ultimately just overarching, really excited to be able to chat with you all and honored to have this opportunity to be in front of this group today. And I hope you take away 1 or 2 things to take home and think about for yourself, to challenge yourself, to continue to grow and learn. You already have done that by being here and being at Women in Ortho. What a phenomenal environment that's created for us to continue our own growth journeys. So what I want to talk about and lasering in a little bit is really what does it look like for women in healthcare today, whether you're on the business side or you're a clinician or a doctor practicing and seeing patients. Healthcare for women in the system wasn't designed to sustain us, right? It wasn't meant to balance us. Often at home, we're carrying clinical responsibility. We're carrying the family responsibility. We're carrying operational accountability at work. And we're leaders of our homes, right? We're managing our schedules, our personal lives, our friends' schedules. If you're not a mom or a stepmom or an adoptive mom, and you're just a woman, you're often taking leadership in those moments at home within your families based on dynamic. We were taught, majority of us, if it's hard, then you're doing it right. If it's hard, then you're doing it right. Is that really what we think is the accurate way for us to think about things? Because what that's doing, that mentality, is simply creating extreme exhaustion, right? And we're exhausting ourselves to be able to say, well, it's really hard, so I'm doing it right. And so it's just something I want you all to think about is, have you ever felt successful on paper, but just completely depleted in real life? I know I have. I've had those moments in my career where I'm like, I should be so proud. I've made it to this point. I have a seat at the board table. I'm an executive. I'm a mom of 4, almost 5. I've done it, and I'm still feeling a little empty. You're not failing. That's actually you responding to the broken model of women as leaders, women as doctors, women as taking on more that just hasn't been considered over time. And so I want you to think about ways in which where you're feeling full and fulfilled and depleted over the next couple of days and taking in all the great speakers that I know came before me and those that are going to come after me. Strong leadership and a well-lived life, they're not opposites. They're not 2 different things, right? They're supposed to be able to be one. And that's what we need to talk through a little bit more today. And we're going to dive into, and what I want you all to be able to truly walk away with some thoughts to contemplate on what it means for you. The one thing I always tell my teams that work for me is balance is to the beholder. So what my personal balance is, or what one of your personal balance is, it might look a little different. It might look different for each of us. Ultimately, you need to take some time, if you have not already in life, and assess, what is my balance? And let me tell you, my balance 4 years ago, when I had 2 little ones, versus now my balance is I'm about to have 3 under 3 and then 2 older elementary aged kids. Totally different. So I do have to force myself to have moments to step back and reassess that balance and what it looks like. But let's dive in a little bit about the model of leadership, especially the leadership in just healthcare in general and in ortho. The traditional values are we're available all the time. Call me while I'm rocking my baby to sleep. Text me in the morning when I'm brushing my teeth. Endurance over effectiveness. The harder you go, the better you are. Self-sacrifice is a commitment. I'm going to give up being present for my daughter's 10th birthday to speak at Women in Ortho. By the way, I did actually originally make that sacrifice, had a mom moment. She was going to be there with me today in person. That's me putting myself in check live and being a little bit of humility in front of you all today. But, you know, that's things that we're taught to do, especially for women. Saying yes becomes a mode of survival. How many of you say yes to something and you're like, wow, I really just don't have it in me, but I'm going to say yes anyways because I feel like I have to say yes. And saying no feels like a risk. It feels like something that could hurt you or damage your reputation or damage your relationship with someone. And that's what makes a lot of women as leaders feel indispensable, and we often feel trapped. We feel trapped that we're not allowed to give the answer we really want to give. We feel like we just have to be that yes person. And so for you, you know, something I want you to reflect on is, what if you personally write this down, take it home and think about it, maybe talk with a friend or a significant other or a mentor about it. What if you normalized that is quietly costing you? So let me say that again. What have you normalized that's quietly costing you your sanity or your time or your personal health? And really, you know, that's a question I trigger myself. I actually have it pop up on my calendar once every other week. I ask myself that because I spiral back into what I just shared, committing to something on an important day. And so how do you have that reflection and what are your realms for being able to have that reflection? And so as you think about that, recognize the environment of we're praised for having it all together, right? And holding it all together, but not for building systems that require us to, right? And so as we continue on, think about how do we build a system and a process for ourselves. Setting a calendar invite to ask myself a question works for me. I've blocked admin time on my calendar. That works for me. So considering how do you organize and what works best for you, once you assess what's costing you, that's when we dig into how do we fix it. Next, really talking about burnout is a leadership problem. It is a leadership problem. How many of you have staff members that have came to you and said, I am just exhausted, and we're just like, we have stuff to do. We got to keep going. We have 50 patients this afternoon coming in. We have 10 exams today, and we need to convert at 70% because that's industry benchmark. And we're going to convert that 70% today. So 7 of the 10 need to say yes. So we got to go, team. It's time to get it together. We got lots to do. We have to figure out as leaders, that's not the representation that's going to allow us to get those results, actually. We have to shift that, right? Because burnout isn't about weakness. It's about misaligned leadership design. If our teams are burning out and if we're burning out, that means our design of our leadership, whether it's in your practice or in your larger ortho business, or even honestly at home, your leadership in your house with your partner, your spouse, whomever, it's misaligned. Burnout shows up as irritability, disconnection, brain fog. That's the worst one. That gets me all the time. Loss of joy. People aren't having fun while they're doing it. Yet women are often told I call it the suck it up method, right? Be more resilient. Practice better self-care. But you cannot meditate yourself out of misalignment, guys. We have to think about that, ladies, as that's misalignment. That's not suck it up and go. We need to really dig in and figure out what can we change as leaders to be able to make that feel different and make that burnout lesser and lesser. Strong leaders don't absorb dysfunction. we redesign it. And so today is a little bit about figuring out and assessing all these questions and take homes for you all are how do you redesign it and create a better balance for not only yourself, but your team, and also maybe your family, maybe your kiddos, maybe your spouse, maybe your partner, maybe your girlfriend, boyfriend, significant other, whatever it is. We have to redesign it today if you're feeling that way. If you've shook your head yes to any of the things I've shared, this is a great time to start to think about how do we redesign. And so the question becomes, it's not how much can I endure, it's what kind of leader do I want to be? And for how long do I want to be that type of leader? Strong leadership in maturing is really measured on how little depends on you. I had a really hard time with this as a young leader. I came from, a Michigan auto family where my mom, was a practitioner and my dad worked for General Motors, and on the weekends, my parents did paint jobs to pay for us to go to private school or any of the things we were looking to do. It was the work hard mentality. And take it all on, shoulder it, never ask for help. How many of you today, just raise your hands for one another. I know I'm not going to be able to see who's raising their hands, but for one another in the room, let's just take a minute. How many of you today feel you just take on more than you should and burn yourselves out? I'm going to take a wild guess. You're all looking around, laughing, slight raise of hands. The person that half raises their hand is out there. We have to learn to delegate to our teams. As a young leader, I'm going to shoulder it, and my team's going to love me because I'm going to tell them I did it for them, right? I'm going to tell them I executed that so they didn't have to worry about it. And what I ended up doing was a couple of different things. I ended up forgetting to empower my team, right? I didn't empower my people to really make great decisions for the business. I ended up burning myself out. We just talked about that. I burned myself out so bad. I was working 4 a.m. till 11 p.m. nonstop and maybe getting a couple of hours of sleep early on in my career. And I had a leader tell me at one point, who have you developed? Who are you developing to take those things on for you? And it was an impasse for me earlier on in saying, you know what, the best stamp of being a leader is developing my people to take on and reach their highest potential and empower them to figure out what their balance is and not take it all on. So I've learned strong leaders, in my opinion, build people and not dependency, create clarity instead of chaos, right? When your team's feeling like they're spiraling and it's the day that didn't go as planned and there's 10 emergency appointments that flew onto the calendar because it was Easter and they were eating the hard candy and they shouldn't have been, whatever that might be. We bring the clarity then, replace heroics, me mentioning my story right there of I'm going to do all of this so my team doesn't have to, with structure and process and routine. And in healthcare, we have to stop confusing urgency with importance, right? Right now, especially in ortho, very competitive, right? We have orthodontists, we have super dentists, we have dentists that do aligners, right? We're constantly feeling like we're competing rather, sorry. And we're working with urgency all the time to earn that. Let's find our importance instead. Everything feeling critical. How many of you are like, I have 10 things on my list and all of them are equally really important, right? But not everything, but that's not it. Everything needs to be strategic, right? Everything's not critical. It needs to be strategic in how we do it. And so examples of ways to improve that is delegation as development, right? You have a clinical assistant who really wants to be a TC. What could they take on to develop their way towards that TC role? Clear decision rates for the OMs in the room. Do you understand what you can make as decisions for the practice without having to go to your doctor partner? For the clinical assistants in the room or TCs in the room, do you know that with your OM? For the execs in the room, do you know that with your boss? Do you know where your empowerment lives? And as a leader, have you assigned that empowerment so you know that they're going to make those decisions without coming to you, and you have a process to spot check what decisions have you made this week? Give me a recap. Is there a one-on-one scheduled? Are there those things? And then removing yourself from being the bottleneck. You don't have to have your hands on everything. And I even in just this last year was challenged at my, another level of that, where I have right now, 50 plus orthodontic brands underneath my leadership. And I wanted to interview any new doctor candidate we had. And by the way, my brands are across the nation, some 6-hour flights, some hour flights, some local. I couldn't do it. I couldn't be that. And I needed to remove the bottleneck for my team and be able to allow them and empower them, my regional leaders and my recruiting teams, to be able to execute and get those things done. And so again, I preach this in sharing my own vulnerability. I'm a constant work in progress on my own topic here today. But the true statement here is, if everything requires you, the system's fragile. It's not a strong system. So if you're at a large company and you have a CEO who wants to be a part of everything, and they're not empowering their teams or making clear decision makers on the team and the layers below it, it's fragile. The business is fragile. It's not strong. And the way to strengthen it is to start to layer in that structure that I talked about. I use a saying with my team all the time: persistence and consistency is annoying, and annoying gets results. I might be the most annoying boss that they have from time to time. And I laugh about it, but that's because I want to build that structure. That's me craving the structure that allows me to go and say, you know what, they've got this. And it allows me to shift and asking the questions: what were your wins this week? What can I do to help you? What barriers do you have? Versus saying, what approvals do you have for me? What things can I say yes to, right? And so think about ways in which in your business, your practice, your brand, and in your personal life, in full transparency, are the systems fragile? And how can you make shifts by creating structure and empowerment and delegation to really strengthen that? Personal well-being coinciding with all of that is not selfish, right? That's what's going to create by creating those structures, is you will grow in your personal well-being, because now you can kind of step back and say, you know what? My team's got this. You've got this. And you can trust that it's happening. Of course, you have to inspect what you expect. You can't just wash your hands clean of it and never check on it again. But if you've built the structure and the routine for one-on-ones or connectivity or inspecting what you expect day to day with a huddle or something of that nature, you should be able to, the other 90% of the time, trust that it's happening, right? And that's strategy. And what that strategy gives you is balance. And so, within that, think about the fact we're now at a point, because you're not so in the weeds and you're not so buried in being the decision maker of, what are we going to do for a debond treat for this month? And you're not involved in all of that because you trust your team to come up with the fund for the practice and the patients. You now are making safer decisions for the bigger picture. I call it the 10,000-foot view, right? Take the lid off the building, understand what's going on underneath it. You're making better decisions because you're operating at a place of clarity, not only at work, but most likely at home. I know when I get really stressed out, that comes home with me, as much as I'd love it not to as a mom. And sometimes I'm just like, I'm going to pull my hair out. I can't make a decision at home. My husband's like, what do you want for dinner? And I'm like, the world just ended. We don't know what we're having for dinner yet. And why is that my decision to make? Someone else make the decision, right? And so if we don't have those stressors, we can make safer decisions. We also honestly open up to lead with more empathy, because we've allowed our team, I call it running into a brick wall. We've allowed our team to run. And so we can lead with a level of empathy that we didn't have before, because our brains are relaxed, because we're not diving in and wiring all of these things that are out of balance for our role in our personal life. We're communicating more clearly because we're hearing, asking, what can I do to support you, or what barriers you have? And we're letting them tell us, and we have to listen. Active listening is a huge part of that. Sometimes it's really hard. And by the way, for me, sometimes that means I have to close my computer at home. It means this goes away. It's nowhere near the dinner table for my family because I'll be responding to the doctor that doesn't know I'm eating dinner. If I see it go off, I can't not respond. It's like an itch. But it allows us to be more present, which just creates a whole different experience, not only for yourself, but for your team and for your home life, your personal life, whatever that might be. You're lowering that crisis response. But when a crisis does happen, your ability to dive in at this point is so much more thorough. The other piece is it's going to help that depletion, right? And so one of the things I want you to think about is the way you live teaches your team what leadership costs. So I'm going to say that again. The way you live teaches your team what leadership costs. Now, I'm a mom of 4, almost 5, so my team knows the way I live right now is a little bit chaotic. However, I show that to my team by saying, I'm committed to taking off the 2 days before New Year's, and I'm going to disconnect. You're in charge. You know, if you make a decision and it's the wrong one, that's okay. We'll figure it out when I get back. But I'm going to show you right now that me disconnecting is going to allow me to have better clarity when I come back and be a better leader for you. Which brings me into boundaries. That example brings me into talking about boundaries. Boundaries protect the human. We think about boundaries as like a time protection, like I have my admin block in my schedule, and that's how I protect my time, right? That's not how I protect my time. That's how I protect my sanity. Because I know for me as a human, if I don't write my to-do list, I'm old school, I make a square, I write to do at the top, and then I write the list and I draw each individual square, and crossing it off and checking it is very satisfying for me. I'm sure some of you are laughing out there because you're exactly wired the same. And then others are like, I use my phone, I use notes, whatever it is that works for you. But that admin time for me on my calendar actually is a boundary for my brain. It's not a boundary for my time. I have no problem giving up my time, but my brain needs to wrap my head around the day in front of me so I can be all the things that I just talked to you about for my team, for my family, etc. Boundaries, also having them and them being respected. So if you are a leader in the room today and you have a team member create a boundary, it's very hard sometimes when the boundary doesn't make sense for you, but respecting your team's boundaries is so critical, because ultimately, if they know you respect that boundary, it reduces resentment. And that's just such a critical thing for us to be cognizant of as leaders, right? Well, I work at 6 a.m. Why can't you work at 6 a.m.? We just have to understand we all have different boundaries that live out there. It also improves decision making, right? It allows us to have that clarity and that free space and free mind that I just chatted about, and creates what I love to call psychological safety, especially when we put boundaries on meetings, when you do a team meeting. Something I always open my team meetings with is, this is a psychologically safe space. I want people to say, I want what goes in their mind to come out their mouths in that space, because I grow from that, they grow from that, and we get better clarity on where we're truly at, gaps that we need to fill, and all of those things. Not responding immediately is viewed as not caring. Taking leave, today's society, taking time off, right, is viewed as lack of commitment. When leaders set boundaries, teams follow. So if you're not taking time off, your team's going to feel like they can't. If you're not responding, they're going to feel like they don't need to respond, or that you don't care, and they're going to lose their own care. And so when you set clear boundaries for yourself and you lead with that example for your team, and for my mom is in the room, guess who else is learning from you in that moment of you as a leader is your kiddos. They're learning from you. And you know, that relief that they will feel when they see that you're willing to sit down. My 10-year-old daughter is on a Hallmark movie kick right now. I think we're still watching Christmas, by the way. I'm trying to peel us into Valentine's Day on Hallmark, but she's stuck on Christmas Hallmark. Me being willing to make a boundary for an hour and a half and sit down with her as she's about to be a big sister of 4 and just give her that love is relief for her. And a boundary for me that she's seeing me set, and my husband honoring that by managing everything else. So she's the only girl right now. We have 3 little boys, and this is a little girl too. But that boundary and my husband honoring that boundary for me allows us to be able to give her that and show her that it's okay to protect some time for herself. And so boundaries aren't walls, they're guardrails, right? Someone's saying, I'm putting up a brick wall and I'm not doing that. That's not creating a boundary. There is a difference, okay? A boundary is saying like, hey, I got a guardrail and it's here. And this is just where I cap out. And that's that difference that we have to think about. And as we look at overall balance, I mentioned this a little bit earlier. And I said, work-life balance is in the beholder of the human. What is balance for me might not be balance for you. Part of my balance is getting up at, 5 a.m. so I can put the cooling mask on my face and sip coffee in quiet with no toddlers running around, right? That might not be your situation. It might not be your scenario. Or balance for me is 2 days a week leaving the office by 3 o'clock because I want to be the mom that can pick her kids up at school, right? That's very important to me. I want to be the room mom. So sometimes it means a boundary on my calendar for work because I'm going to go do the room mom thing for my son's 2nd grade classroom. And next year it'll be my daughter's 5th grade because we're swapping right now. But balance is the eye of the beholder. So saying you reach a pure place of constant balance, we also have to remember it's unrealistic to expect it to be constant because it should be evolving with us and what our life looks like, right? So constant balance, I just want to share, it's a great word. It's misused in my opinion a lot because it's not realistic to always be at a place of balance. What's realistic is to constantly be balancing, right? Balancing our calendars, balancing ourselves, balancing our boundaries at all times. And really, it implies, balance implies like I'm going to give this for that. That's not balance. That's not what that should do, right? What we need to shift into is asking ourselves alignment questions like, does my calendar reflect my goals and my values? Do my priorities show up in how I'm spending my time? Leadership is requiring and knowing where you're at within that, right? And so ask yourself those questions. And maybe those are great calendar questions for you, right? On a Monday morning or Friday afternoon, whenever you organize the week in front of you or the week behind you, whenever you do your reflecting. Again, does my calendar, personal and professional, reflect my priorities and values? And how do my priorities show up in my time? Am I doing those? Because if you're not working on any of those things, that's when that resentment that we talked about earlier kicks in at a high gear. Leadership at home counts too. I've trickled this in a little bit, but I do want to hit on it. Your leadership doesn't end when you leave work. And even if you are single and live alone, it still is the same. You have family, you have friends, you have things that pull on our time. And again, as I mentioned way earlier in the speaking, is as women, we tend to feel like we got to do all the things. We got to go to the birthday parties. We got to show up here. We need to be ready for this. We need to be on time for this, right? And we lead. Commonly, we lead. Often our brains, by the way, especially those that are high-strung type A women, which I believe is a lot of you in this room because that's how we got to where we are, right? That's why we're here. That's why we're like women in ortho, I'm going, right? Is we don't know how to say no to those things like we talked about earlier. How do we create that boundary, that balance, right? So many women as leaders, we excel professionally and we show up and people are like, wow, she's impressive. She's got that. She's got it together, right? Well, then they feel like they're failing personally. And that's a big struggle for me. That's been a huge component for myself is when I'm focused heavier on my career, I feel like I'm failing as a mama. right? And when I'm focusing as a mama, I feel like I'm failing in my career. And I'm in a constant battle with myself on what's that, what does that look like? And how do I balance that? And, my husband will ask me when it comes to the career stuff, of course, in true spousal fashion, he says, well, what title's going to satisfy you one day? What title's going to put you in a place of feeling like I did it? And I had to realize all the things that I wanted to do, I've done, right? I've wanted to impact people's lives. I've wanted to develop something that's great. I wanted people to transparently know who I was, right? And so I've done that a little bit. But ultimately, I thought I was failing personally. I looked back and was like, what have I lived, right? What life have I lived? I've never been here. I've never been there. I've not done this with my child. I didn't coach dance for my daughter when she wanted me to. As a 23-year dancer and competitive dancer, I said no because I didn't have time, right? So what win did I have there, right? And I think that at that point, that failure personally triggered for me just a shift in how I view some of these things. Leadership isn't consistency and presence and modeling, right? The goal isn't perfection. I don't need to be the perfect leader for my team or for my kids for that matter, or my husband for that matter, I should say. It's really having a balance of integrity across all of those roles to be able to say, hey, I can do this, but I gotta do this as well, right? And it can't be that swap out like we just talked about. It can't be that constant give and take, but I'm gonna do this to this level, then I'm gonna do that to this. And it's really figuring it out. And what I've learned recently and in a really recent measure is that there's no title out there, even for our doctors out there, which amazing work that you all did, all the schooling you did, but there's no title out there that merits absence from your own life. We only have one of these to live, right? So we have to be constantly aware of that. And so from there, if you've had that focus, and most of us in this room have, right? Whether you're fighting for doctor, for VP, office manager, regional director, CFO, whatever it is that you've worked for, let's redefine that a little bit. Let's redefine what matters a little bit. And you'll see in my near future here that I've really actually had to come to terms with this title piece. I struggled with this actually over the last 2 months of what title and role defines me. And I had to realize it didn't define me. And so how did I redefine that? And what did that look like? And I want to share that with you all today is I get to, as a human, and you each get to, as women in ortho, you get to define your success for you and you only. Not inherit it, not take it on as it is. So it doesn't have to mean constant availability, endless upward motion like we talked about today, losing yourself in the process and giving up and feeling like you have emptiness. We need to define it as impact without burnout. So what can I give without really causing myself to just feel empty in the other half of my life? Authority without humanity, right? How do I allow and empower my teams to really drive things for me so I can then have balance? And also, by the way, giving them things and putting things on their plates actually gives them balance. It starts to help them have a different balance because they're not coming to you to wait for an okay. So you're actually making their lives easier when you do that too. Most importantly, growth, personally and professionally, that honors your life and the life that you want to have. I'm going to say that again. Growth, personally and professionally, that aligns to the life you want to have. So if you go home today and think about anything, it's what today matters, right? And I will say, what mattered to me 10 years ago, that growth and that growth today are totally different, right? In 10 years, as of the next handful of weeks, I will have had 5 babies in 10 years and a few angel babies as well. And ultimately, what does that mean and how do we balance it? And how does it honor my life and the life I want to live? And so how do you create that really clear-minded thought process for yourself? Strong leadership, I'll end with today. Strong leadership and a well-lived life reinforce the other. We need to be clear-headed. We need to be grounded. We need to be sustainable. You don't have to choose between excellence and rest, ambition and presence, leadership and life. We can find harmony. Now, harmony isn't something you go and find once and you're like, I've done it. I'm harmonized. I'm here. It's over. Harmony is something that comes from constant assessment. So as I shared very early on in our time together today, the calendar reminder every other week on my priorities and my balance and my boundaries and all of those things. What's my point of reflection to make sure I'm in constant harmony? Okay. Strong leadership meets a well-lived life at the point of intention. So if we are intentional about both things and we take some of the questions today and find ways to ask ourselves and grow ourselves daily, and how you answer those, recognize how you answer those questions today for yourself a year from now might have different answers, and both are okay. So creating consistency and persistency for yourself and assessing this, that intersection changes from weakness to wisdom. And in healthcare and orthodontics, more women who lead from there will truly win. And you will truly find that balance. And I want a final note for you all is, again, I can't stress enough, this is not a one and done. This is a constant evolution of ourselves and how we check ourselves. And by the way, if you have a person that's really good at putting you in check on where you're at, lean to that person in this moment. Maybe they're in this room, because I know a lot of us, we look at our teams and we spend more time with them than we do our families, unfortunately, a lot of times. But maybe for the docs in this room, maybe it's your OM or your TC. Have them keep you in check if you're out of balance, and be okay with them calling you out. If it's your spouse at home or your oldest child or your best friend or your boyfriend, whomever it is, lean to that person to help you, because we're never going to be perfect with it. But if we shift how we think about giving our time and our mind, and we adjust how we empower our people and even our people in our personal lives as well to do and make decisions, that's when we're going to create that well-lived balance between the two. Thank you so much again for your time today. I'm again so sorry I couldn't be there in person. I look forward to seeing you all next year at Women in Ortho. I can't wait to attend next year, and just thank you to the Women in Ortho team for all the hard work they did to put on such an amazing event for all of us to attend. Dr. Dunn has just done a phenomenal job building this organization for all of us to be able to come, learn, grow, and challenge themselves. And I will be honest, writing and putting this together today, I had moments where I'm like, I'm going to talk about it, and boy, I need to actually preach it to myself. So I'm even going to take post today my own words of impasse and really do some reflecting myself. And I welcome you to do that with yourselves, amongst yourselves in the next couple of minutes before the next speaker comes on. But thank you again for your time. I look forward to connecting with you all. Happy to connect with anyone here. You can find me on LinkedIn. If you have questions or want to chat further, would love to hear what you thought, or if you have any feedback for me as well. Thank you so much.